So we're here to talk about multiclassing in Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition. That is the latest edition for Dungeons and Dragons from Wizards of the Coast and Hasbro. This edition has been around for about 5 years now, so we're kind of going into its 6th full year of awesomeness. And there's been a lot of books available to characters to build different types of characters, and if you don't want to stick with one class, you can multi-class, and there are rules for that explained in the player's handbook. But to kind of kick it off, like, why would you want to multi-class, right? So each class is built to stand on its own. It's not like there's a need to multi-class, but you can definitely create some really cool combinations when you do.
For sure.
I can actually say that my first character that I played in this edition ended up being a multi-classed character, which we'll go over a whole bunch of different combinations later. Do you find yourself multi-classing much, Angela?
I think I have about 4 of my characters that aren't multi-classed.
And how many characters do you have? Dozens?
I've got about, I want to say, close to 35 Adventures League characters, and I think 4 of them aren't multi-classed.
Wow. So why do you multi-class, Angela?
Because it's fun.
Yeah? You can't, stick to one class? There's too many juicy abilities you want from the other classes?
Oh, there's so many juicy abilities, and I want all of them.
Awesome. All right. Well, we'll cover some of the basics, as I mentioned, as to, multi-classing in general, and then we'll get into some really cool combinations. And, of course, if anyone has any questions, you can turn on your mic, or you can just ping us in the general chat. And I'll do my best to, keep an eye on that. If I haven't given you presenter mode and you would like to speak again, please just ping me in general chat and we'll get going. So the first thing you need to know about multi-classing is that there are prerequisites. You can't just, pick a whole bunch of classes and slam them all together. There is a chart and chapter in the player's handbook that goes over multi-classing rules. And the basics are that you have to meet certain attribute requirements, which is generally 13 in the primary stat of the class that you have. So even though with your first class that you choose, you don't have to meet, any sort of requirements to take that class, if you want to multi-class into another class, you have to at least meet the multi-classing minimum requirement of your existing class before you can choose another.
Yep. And each class has its own specific stat that you need to multi-class, and some classes have 2. Like, for example, if you want to multi-class into Ranger, you need to have both Dexterity and Wisdom 13.
Yeah, and I'll just share my screen here briefly. And show you what I mean. Can you see my screen okay, Angelo?
Yep.
All right, so we're looking at D&D Beyond. This is the player's handbook, and it does have a list of all the prerequisites that you would require for a new class. And although it's not in the player's handbook, the newest class that has recently been added to 5th edition, the Artificer, would require an intelligence of 13, I believe.
Correct.
To be able to multi-class. So 13 is generally the magic number. And as Angelo mentioned, for those classes that you can see here in the middle, Fighter, Monk, Paladin, Ranger. Actually, Monk, Paladin, Ranger, it's and. So you need both of those things. But for Fighter, it's an or, which is great because you might be a ranged fighter with Dexterity, or you might be a melee with the Strength stat. I'll just stop sharing there. Okay. So the other thing, too, is that when you start with a class, you get a lot of proficiencies. Yes, 13 is very lucky, Diana. I agree. Like 13 is great. Yeah, I'd say magical. Reminds me of a Friday the 13th in hell. Right, Angelo?
Sorry, what was that?
It reminds me of a Friday the 13th in hell.
Yep.
Last
Something
year.
about that.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
That was so much fun, man. When we were the Hell Riders, we literally went to Hell, Michigan and ran the Vernus premiere. It was good times.
Yeah, no, amazing. But going back to the multi-classing and proficiencies, one thing to note is, again, just like you need a minimum prerequisite attribute, you are going to gain some proficiencies from classes, but most of the time you won't. You sometimes won't get some of the best class proficiencies, and sometimes that's an armor class proficiency that you're not going to get, like heavy armor. Yep. So the order with which you choose your build for your character is important.
Yep.
So quite often, people that want that heavy armor proficiency are gonna take a class first that has that before taking another class. So a lot of people, might multi-class with fighter, because fighter has that great second level ability of action surge, but they might also want to be a fighter for heavy armor, and that might be a reason why you want to choose that one first.
Yep.
The other thing to take note of too is when you're multi-classing in between more than one class that has spell casting abilities, you really need to pay very close attention to the multi-classing chapter and how your spell slots are given. So they do kind of merge together when you multi-class.
Yep.
They're not as great as just going straight into one class all the way to 20. And the other thing to consider too is if you dip into Warlock or start as a Warlock, your packed magic spell slots are completely separate from any spell slots that you might get from the spell casting ability.
It does give you 6 slots for shield, though.
Yes, indeed. Totally.
If you take 2 levels of Warlock.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, we'll go over that for sure. That's a very common multi-classing option. But the other thing to take note of, though, is you are giving something up on multi-classing.
You are. Generally, when you're multi-classing, you're not going to get your upper echelon end game abilities, or you're going to be delaying some of your earlier game abilities that you might really want or need. Yeah, which is why when multi-classing is just as important as where you start.
Yeah, because if you're multi-classing early, then you're going to be giving up the possibility of potentially getting your ability score increase at level 4. And, getting your primary stat, if you're into, the more mechanical and mathematical parts of Dungeons and Dragons, you're going to reduce your ability to hit. The longer you prolong that, the trickier it can be at the higher tiers.
You still get the proficiency bonus increase though, which is nice.
Correct.
But yes, you may lose out on certain ASIs and ASI timing, but that's usually okay because what you're getting from multi-classing is usually more than enough to make up for it.
Yeah, and if you're a spellcaster and you really want your 9th level spell slots, just remember that when multi-classing, you're probably only going to take 2 levels of another class, because you do have to wait until level 17 to get your first 9th level spell slot.
You will get your 9th level spell slot, though, if you multi-class into another full spellcaster. You just won't have 9th level spells.
That's very true, yeah. You're going to have to search for some scrolls or have a very nice dungeon master. That's going to drop.
Or roll really high on those scrolls.
Yeah, that's going to give you a 9th level spell scroll. Yeah. But let's talk about some of these multi-class combos, shall we?
Yes, let's get into it.
All right.
Why don't you go first and tell me what the two strongest multi-classes that you think of are, in your opinion?
Yeah, in my opinion. I mean, everyone's got their own flavor and such, but actually, the first character that I made in 5th edition was exactly this multi-class. I didn't even know that it had a cool name, in with the community, but they call it a coffee lock. And basically, it's a sorcerer warlock combination. To be honest, it's probably better to take warlock first because it gets some better proficiencies. Although, depending on the saving throw proficiencies that you want, you can choose either or. But the basic idea behind the coffee lock is that you're going to take a minimum of 2 levels in warlock, and you're going to spend a lot of your levels getting into being a sorcerer and getting those meta magic options. Because what you really want to be doing is casting an Eldritch Blast all day long. And where it gets pretty amazing is that Eldritch Blast is a cantrip, so you're probably not using your Warlock spell slots that much. And so instead, you in between short rests, you can be using those spell slots to get your meta magic points back up. And so you can be, quickening your Eldritch Blasts all day long.
Yep.
And it's just, Eldritch Blast is just a great spell. You're rolling to hit more than once potentially at the higher tiers because it is a cantrip. You don't have to worry about multi-classing. It's going to, as a cantrip, follow your character levels. And so, you can just build up all those points and be quickening that, like I said, all day long. So with that, you're probably going to want to take Agonizing Blast to add your Charisma modifier. And it's great because Sorcerer is a Charisma-based spellcaster as well. So you'll probably be spending your ability score increases on that. Pop a Hex on it because, you're a Warlock, another one of their signature spells. And, you're just Eldritch Blasting all day.
Yeah, I mean that's going to be the name of the game, especially like when you hit level 17, and now you with at the cost of 2 sorcery points, you're firing 8 Eldritch Blasts, which is going to be a lot of damage if you have Hex up or anything else.
Yeah,
if you have Agonizing Blast, especially.
Yeah, and then you got your flat Charisma bonus on each of those damage rolls, as well as an extra D6 from Hex. And almost nothing is going to be able to resist force damage. So you're pretty much doing, full damage all day until you get to that Helmed Horror.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That Helmed Horror is going to ruin your day when you can't hit it because it's immune to force damage.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so Angelo, what did you have on your list for strong multi-classing combos?
So my top pick for strongest multi-classing combo is the Witch Knight, the Paladin Warlock. You take 11 levels of Paladin and 9 levels of Warlock, and you are going to ruin something's day when you double smite them for 1 billion D8 damage on top of your regular hit. And then knock them prone for your second swing where you smite them again.
Aha. That is a pretty killer combo. What number of levels of Warlock would you be taking?
I like to go personally 11-9, 11 Paladin, 9 Warlock, because that gives you the 2 level 5 Warlock slots. And if you are a Hexblade, which you should be, it gives you Banishing Smite, so you can triple smite.
Oh, very nice. And I guess with a Hexblade build and some of those Eldritch invocations, you can be adding the Eldritch Smite as well.
Yes, exactly. That's the whole point. You Divine Smite, Eldritch Smite, and bonus action Banishing Smite.
Amazing.
For the nuclear war strike, basically.
Gotcha. Wow. Yeah. So that's when you can take down a wizard like Hallister in one hit.
Well, I mean, you saw the one build that I had where I did 275 damage in one swing, so
and that's what that
you can hit hard.
All right. Okay. So I was going for something a little different. I thought that actually sorcerer paladin combination or a sorkadin is a pretty good combo too, because you can cast haste on yourself, which is a pretty good combo. Um, Many sorcerers, like using haste on, potentially even multiple members of the party if they're upcasting it, or using some meta magic to target more than one person at its base level, so you can
Mhm.
really get the battlefield going. So if there are multiple paladins, that's just going to be crazy, because it's generally your
Yeah,
fighter or paladin or maybe a monk that you're going to put haste on. Get as many of those extra attacks or extra opportunities to smite, right? As you know,
yeah,
the paladin only gets 2 attacks per melee, so certainly throwing in haste in there gives you that extra opportunity to potentially crit, and that's when you want to go full on out using you know your highest level slot that you can to be smiting.
exactly. Even though the smite does cap at 5th level, you can't smite 4th level. Sorry, you can't smite above 4th level. You can use the slot, but it doesn't give you more dice. Divine smite does have a cap, but you can use all those high level slots for everything else, including getting sorcery points. You can quicken booming blade for more smites.
For sure, smite all day, definitely. All right. Did you have another strong combo?
Well, my other one, it's more of like a really good early game strong combo. It does kind of taper off a little bit, and it does have its issues. But early in the game, there's nothing that heals more than the Life Druid. One level in Life Cleric, and then as many Druid levels as you can stack onto it. You can't wear heavy armor unless you find something that's not made of metal, but you still do get good berries that heal for 40 health on a first level spell slot.
And how does that
Because of
work?
the Disciple of Life combo from Life Cleric, it will let each berry heal for 4, and each berry healing for 4, when you have 10 berries, is 40 health. Mind you, you're going to be really full, and you can only do 4 health at a time, but out of combat, no better healing.
No, that's true. That's true. And that's the important distinction. It does take an action to use one of those berries. But
Exactly.
when you're in Avernus, you certainly want something like that. As the food there, I hear, is terrible. All right. Well, we put together some other combinations, some fun combinations. I guess I'll start since you just gave us one. I had a fun one I called the Dark Assassin. So this was a build where I took a Gloom Stalker Ranger, who is, got the great ability to kind of be invisible whenever they're in an area where someone relies on dark vision to see them. So that kind of gives you an advantage on all of your attacks, which is great. And in your first round, you get a bit of extra movement, you get an extra attack, you do some extra damage. It's a pretty good build. But to take it a step further, going rogue assassin, is really going to kick that up a bit. It's going to give you some extra damage from your sneak attack. If you're not being seen and you're getting a high initiative roll, you're basically going to auto crit as well, and you don't even need anyone near you because you're invisible. You're going to have advantage on your attack. It's a pretty killer combo. And if you then stack fighter on top of that build, you can get a lot of extra attacks the higher you go. It's also a great build with certain feats. So if you're a crossbow expert, you can be shooting on your bonus action as well. And again, just having all these extra chances to land critical hits, and just doing your extra damage from sneak attack at least once, and just generally being invisible. You just and if you throw on sharpshooter, you're also again, having the advantage as well as the -5, you're almost always going to be able to land that hit and do that extra 10 damage. I played this for Storm King's Thunder as a human, and the beauty of being a Gloomstalker is you get dark vision when you take that subclass at level 3. So I had a lot of fun playing it. The only downfall is that you are generally invisible to your friends as well. So don't get hit and don't go down, because the ability doesn't turn off. If they rely on dark vision to see and they can't see you to heal you or to buff you, you're toast.
Or to name you as an ally from Spirit Guardians. That's another important one that a lot of people forget. If you are invisible, you cannot be named as an ally for Spirit Guardians, and your cleric Spirit Guardians will tear you apart just as fast as the
enemy. Same as an evoker wizard, right? If they can't see you, they can't protect you from a fireball. So I was often climbing the walls, or perching up in places to get away from those effects. And obviously with sharpshooter, you're not going to have any issues hitting people even from the longest range that your weapons permit. So it's really just, keeping track of your ammunition so you don't run out. Angela, what fun ones did you have?
Well, my most favored of all the multi-class options, and probably the thing that I play the most, is the Bard Rogue, aka the Skill Monkey. If you play it right and you have 10 levels of Bard and 6 levels of Rogue, you've got 8 different expertise. You have so many skills, especially if you go into lower Bard, and it just becomes absolutely... it becomes like you're just running wild on everything. Magical secrets. It's a blast to play. You lose the ability to pretty much not be relevant outside of combat, and even in combat, because the Barg and Road packages are so good, you will also be you will be basically effective in all 3 pillars of the game, which is kind of what you want.
Yeah, for sure. But you like being a Bard just in general, right?
Definitely not going to say that Bard's my favorite class, but Bard's my favorite class.
Perfect. Yeah, I have yet to play Bards that much, but you're right. You're totally going to be good out of combat and in combat, being the Skill Monkey. But also, having that high charisma as a Bard, it's good if you want to intimidate somebody, if you want to persuade somebody. So it's definitely going to come in handy, getting yourself out of trouble, or if you want to cause trouble.
The only thing is you're going to be a little bit squishy, because you're going to be limited to light armor, and you're going to want to put your ASIs and stuff into feats that make you somewhat relevant. So if you're hanging out at around 14 or 15 AC at level 20, so be it.
Yeah. Yes, stay behind the big paladin.
Yep.
Yeah,
Don't go first.
And stay close to the paladin for those saves, because you definitely want to save. Yeah. So what numbers of levels did you take in each for that combination?
So for peak effectiveness, you want 10 Bard, 6 Rogue for the 8 expertise, because Bards get their second set of expertise at level 10, Rogues get their second set of expertise at level 6. I like to start Rogue, actually, because you get that 1 extra skill. And you don't really miss out on too much. I'd rather the 1 extra skill from Rogue than the 2 extra instruments you get as a Bard. But that's just... And
you didn't want to get to level 7 in Rogue to get evasion?
Well, that's what I said. I said at least 10-6. From there, you can do whatever you want, really. Generally, you're probably better off going 14-6 to get the second magical secrets rather than have evasion.
Yeah, no, that's...
the third set of magical secrets, because I like to do this with Lord Bard for the ton of extra skills.
And with those magical secrets, were you taking Eldritch Blast?
Absolutely not.
Okay, sorry.
I know Jerry loves Eldritch Blast, and Eldritch Blast is very powerful, but I don't like it, just because I find when you take Eldritch Blast, that's all you do. And I like to do
you're not wrong. You're not wrong. I mean, even
Don't get me wrong, Eldritch Blast is amazing. It is one of the strongest cantrips and damage spells in 5th edition.
Yeah.
But
okay. Let's see. What's next?
Besides, as a bard, you want counterspell.
True. Yeah. Oh, yeah. You're the best at counterspell, definitely. Yeah. Yeah. So my next fun one is actually one I have yet to play, but I've seen many times as a dungeon master because that's usually what I'm doing, and that is the Druid and Barbarian. It's a pretty fun combo. It's not overpowered or anything like that. It's not one of the strongest ones, but it's fun to go into a rage as a barbarian and then later transform into one of the animals that you can choose from, hoping you have a good DM that's letting you see a lot of fun beasts, right? And then you're stacking your rage on top of that. So it's not like a killer combo, but it is a lot of fun. And you can be doing reckless attacks and everything in these beast forms, and even the totem barbarian lends itself well. You're going to make your druid forms a little tankier by taking half damage. Yep. So it's the meatiest build I can probably think of in terms of just massive pool of hit points from transforming into a bear all day. For example, even at low level.
Bigger and bigger bears. Bigger and bigger
exactly. Bears. And you don't need to worry about armor. You're just going to soak up that damage just like any barbarian all day long.
Because Wild Shape allows you to rage as a bear. Because it allows you to still use your class features, which are reasonable, and bears can get angry.
Definitely. And you're not wearing armor, so I'm pretty sure your armor class is going to be better than the average bear.
Yep, because you're going to get to add your constitution to the natural armor.
All right, what other fun one did you have, Angelo?
So anybody who's played Tier 4 with me, or, Tier 3 even for the last little while before the pandemic, knows that I love to play the Muscle Wizard.
Yes, I was hoping you'd go over this one.
So what you can do is you can take levels of fighter with levels of wizard, and you don't want a lot of levels of fighter because you're going to get your extra attacks by casting spells. So you probably want just a couple levels of fighters for the weapon proficiency and for action surge, and then you're going to want to go the rest of the way wizard, so that you can be a heavy armor wearing wizard who sings a staff with Tensor's Transformation 3 times with Polearm Master, or a glaive 3 times with Great Weapon Master and Polearm Master at advantage. And you get to be like the bro wizard and make fun of all the other wimpy wizards who stand at the back line and can't do anything.
What kind of weapon are you using as a pole master weapon?
So there's an item called the Staff of Power, and it's very good, and it lends itself very well to being in the front line because it boosts your armor class, it boosts your saving throws, and it makes for a pretty good weapon. You don't get to use Great Weapon Master with it, but everything else is totally applicable with Great Weapon Master. Great Weapon Master with a staff.
Yeah, no, it's great. You can even cast spells with it, but it doesn't look like that's what you're doing.
No, you're going up and you're bashing skulls in as a wizard.
And you used a belt of giant strength of some sort?
If you can get one, if not, you're gonna want at least 16 strength in order to be able to swing these weapons somewhat effectively. You don't really care too much about intelligence. You just want enough so that, because I like to use War Wizard, you want enough so that the initiative bonus is useful. Okay. But beyond that, you're going to get most of your damage in from just hitting with Tensor's Transformation, which you can't cast spells in anyway because it doesn't let you.
That's right. Yeah. Any DM that puts you in a force cage would be a jerk, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that's when you have to, stop concentrating on the spell.
Yeah.
And Misty step out.
Totally.
And hope you make the charisma save.
But hey, when you're going up against a, Zaztam or some Lich or something like that, something like that might happen. But it's a cool combo all the same, because
exactly, because
walk up you to get the front.
It's like who doesn't love being the frontline battle mage? It's a lot of fun. Trust me, it's a good time.
Cool. All right. So Angelo had suggested that we talk about some like really, ridiculous multi-classing builds. So, I went searching for something that was totally stupid, and I'm calling this build I Want to Go First. So, again, I'm not recommending that anyone do this, but I put together a bard, 2 levels of bard. I was ranger, gloomstalker, 3 levels. I took a swashbuckler rogue, 3 levels, and a minimum of 2 levels of war wizard. And you might be wondering why these specific combinations, right? Well, if I want to go first, then I want as many, bonuses to my initiative as possible. So obviously I'm starting with a human and taking the alert feat as well to give me a +5 on that. I mean, who cares about being surprised? I just want a super high bonus. I'm going to play adventures or look for a DM that's nice enough to give me some manuals and such, because this is a very mad build. And I know we didn't really talk about that before, but multiple attribute dependency. Okay, so you need a high wisdom, you need a high intelligence, you need a high charisma, and a high dexterity for all of this to work. So what are my dump stats? Everything else. So you're totally squishy with a constitution of 8. But with this build and headband of intellect,
you need at least 13 intelligence, though.
You need at least 13. Yeah, you need at least 13. But I actually built this in D&D Beyond, so I'll actually share my screen for I Want to Go First, and let's see how high I could get. Let's see, Chrome tab, I Want to Go First, share. There we go. Okay. Look at that, +25 to initiative. Okay. Yeah. So you're definitely going to go first. Like, I don't think most people are going to beat that on anything you roll.
No.
I mean, yeah, and not only that, I also took Gloomstalker and the Swashbuckler Rogue because, I'm hoping that, I might be able to sneak up on somebody and get that advantage on my first attack in a surprise round and such. So this is at level 20. I dumped 13 levels into Rogue, and I took the minimums on all the others. But yeah, you
just want that one really big
exactly. Do I have anything to hit with? I mean, not on my sheet because I didn't go that far. But I threw all the tomes on there just to again build something that's just totally ridiculous. And it's a one-trick pony, really. That I even named the character I Want to Go First. So again, not something I'm recommending, but with some creativity,
Oh, I absolutely recommend it because it's going to be hilarious.
Okay, now I have to make this character, right? All right,
it's going to be a good time. I'll have to
plug those letters into like a Scrabble word finder, see if it can make a name out of that. Yep. All right, so that was my one janky build. I don't. Did you put any together, Angela?
I've got 2. There's nothing. Well, that's not true. There's a lot of fun to be had when you multi-class Barbarian and Rogue, because if you use a rapier, which is a finesse weapon, and you reckless attack, you're going to get sneak attack because you have advantage. As long as you make an attack using strength, which you should have as a barbarian, you can be really angry, run at somebody screaming, and sneak attack them.
Yeah, that is pretty ridiculous, and that's the nice thing about finesse weapons too, because you can use strength or dex, right?
Yes, exactly. Even though a rapier is finesse, you can still stab people using strength and get sneak attack because it doesn't say you have to use dex; it just says it has to be with a finesse weapon.
Okay, what was the other one you came up with?
So I didn't come up with this one. This one is one that you can see on a very popular YouTube stream called Puff and Forest, and it is the absurd build. It's where you have 13 or 14 in all of your stats, and you literally have every single class two levels or one level. And that way you get all of the ridiculous class features that classes get at level 1 and 2. You get a lot of different proficiencies. You have you have every cantrip that you could ever possibly want. You have jack of all trades. You have the great berries. You have a lot of really, really good, like, niche things that are going to be useful. And I've actually made this character. I have him at level 18 in Adventurers League. And he's hilarious to play because you're like, oh, I can do that. Oh, no, look, I have this cantrip. Oh, I also have this cantrip. I also have this cantrip. God. Look at me go. I can do everything that we don't usually ever have.
Is that a human character?
It's absolutely a half-elf. Because you need those 2 +1s and the 2 in the charisma in order to get that stat
I wasn't sure if you wanted +1 to everything.
That's also a decent option, but half-elf gives you just that little bit of extra charisma because you have a lot of charisma casters, and you're going to want to be casting Eldritch Blast.
So you do need to use Eldritch Blast for that build.
Well, you don't need to. I also like to go in and stab with Booming Blade and then smite at like 4th level, because you do have 4th level slots with all those half levels.
Oh, I see. Interesting. Do you get to level 3 in anything? No,
nope.
So you don't get a subclass in a lot of classes and that's where a lot of classes get their best abilities. That's interesting. That is crazy. And did you use DMXP to build that character?
Yeah, I did. I started
that would have been tough to actually try to play through and survive.
Yeah, it would have been a nightmare to try to do from level 1. But like I said, I know somebody who did it. It just takes longer, and you have a lot of levels that don't feel great. But if you can ever start at level 15, go for it. It's good time.
And while we were putting together the show notes, you came up with a build that is very new.
Yeah, I have a couple of experimental ones that are very useful and niche because of Tasha's that just came out.
I've been wanting a wizard that can sculpt their spells into different damage types since we got the first War Wizard Unearthed Arcana a couple years ago. We never got it in Xanathar's. I was very sad, but now we have the Wizard of the Order of Scribes, and we also have a new meta magic option for sorcerers that can do the same.
Mm-hmm. So Order of Scribes level 2 ability lets you switch damage types from one spell that you have in your book to another spell that you have in your book. So let's pick 2 spells at random and add 2 levels of Tempest Cleric so that you can maximize lightning damage. And what you do is you cast, let's pick a 6th level spell, Disintegrate, switch it to Lightning from Chain Lightning, and maximize it with Channel Divinity Destructive Wrath, and say, dodge this.
What's the damage type of Disintegrate?
Usually Force, but now it's Lightning because you Order Scribes.
Yeah, that has to be Order of Scribes. That is not available to the Sorcerer because they work with the more familiar elements versus the fancy damage types like Force. So yeah, I think that my next wizard is definitely going to be Order of Scribes. I don't know how I cannot pick this multi-classing combo. It's just too bonkers. Too bonkers.
The other experimental one that I had from Tasha's is that I want to stack Battlesmith Artificer, because you can attack with intelligence and pair it with Blade Singer Wizard.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing.
So that way you don't, you're going to want it. So that way you can do things like, actually use a longsword as a Blade Singer.
I know. It's ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. I mean, that's why so many people love the Hexblade. And why am I mentioning that? Because, can you imagine, before Xanathar's Guide to Everything came out, and you wanted to be a Gish, which is basically a wizard that is in melee, or sorry, I should say a spellcaster that's in melee. Like, most people were saying, oh, I want to take Pact of the Blade as a warlock, and it's just like that was a very mad build, so this is amazing that finally you can put together a combo like this with a Blade Singer, because longsword just makes sense, especially if you're an elf.
Remember how I was talking about that frontline battle mage with fighter? Well, now you can swap in Artificer instead.
Yeah, okay, all right.
And attack with intelligence instead of needing a strength modifier.
No, good combo, and it's finally great that we can also use the Artificer in Adventurers League, because it was an Eberron only class. Yeah.
I love Artificer too.
Totally. And for those people that say Artificer, I don't get it.
I say it both ways. It depends on who I'm talking
to. But yeah, did anybody have any questions? I know we talked about Tasha's already for Diana and her question, or were there other multi-class combos that people have had fun with that they would like to share?
I have a question.
Yeah, sure.
My question is that all the combos that you are saying, it's like you have to have them in mind before creating your character. You have to know your class is going to be a multi-class of this and this, rather than having a class and letting the story direct your multi-classing because it fits with the story-driven, let's say.
I was going to mention this, and I forgot. So thank you for reminding me, because this is actually very important. This is very important. You're right. And again, thank you very much for reminding me, because I had this on the sheet, and then I forgot to talk about it. So a lot of what we talked about is, to getting the most out of multi-classing. Now, as Lewis pointed out and reminded me, another thing that you want to do is when you're playing, is to get a lot of story into your character. Now, if you don't have the plan is useful, because then you're going to have the right stat spread, unless you have a dungeon master and you're not playing Adventures League, which is a rules written game that's going to let you multi-class without the stat requirements for a good story reason. You're going to, like, for example, my very first multi-class, when I started finding out that multi-classing was really good, I was playing a bard and I was playing Storm King's Thunder. And I had made it all the way to later on in the adventure, where we were fighting with the wand of lightning bolts as my only source of damage. I was a bard. I had counterspell and haste as my magical secrets. I didn't really have anything for offense. So then what I ended up doing was like, because the enemies that we were now fighting for 2 fights in a row were completely immune to lightning. I had absolutely nothing I could do in combat to do any damage. So I flavored it that when I hit level 11, I went and I multi-classed into Warlock, because I was talking one day about how I was so useless, and the DM flavored it that the weapon started speaking to me and asking me if I wanted power. So I multi-classed into Warlock that way. So multi-classing for story is always going to be more fun than multi-classing for power.
Sure. And Warlock or even Cleric is a great story multi-classing that you can do. Maybe you find your faith, or maybe you find a master. And as a dungeon master especially, so we've been talking from mostly a player perspective, but certainly as a dungeon master you can influence story with things like this, like an archfey patron or something like that. To be honest, that's my favorite part of playing a warlock, is having a patron. It's like built-in story to go along with anything. And again, you do need to have a little bit of planning involved to some degree if you want to multi-class, just because of the minimum requirements. But again, if you're in a like class, like sorcerer, warlock, or bard, warlock, there are ways for you to kind of, get in between some of these things. Yeah, I wish we could play more with warlock patrons in Adventurers League, especially.
Well, Warlock Patriot is one of them, right? Sometimes you go the other way, and you're having a rough go, and then your character finds some divine inspiration, and now suddenly you're a paladin for justice, right? Like there's so many different story reasons for multiclassing.
Yeah.
And like I said, and again, thank you Lewis. I'm serious when I say this. Thank you for reminding me, because I had it on my sheet and I forgot to say it.
Yeah.
I did want to talk about this because I knew a lot of what we were saying was going to be for the juice, but I definitely wanted to throw it, because we speak usually from an Adventurers League perspective where it's a little bit more rigid. But if you're not playing Adventurers League, and even if you are, I mean, you can definitely, like that story where I was playing a bard was an Adventurers League, but at the same time, you can definitely make more interesting decisions based on your story and what happens to your character, and letting it flow naturally that way.
Yeah,
so thank you again for
and we're not
me.
trying to sell Tasha's Cauldron of Everything as a book, but it does have a lot of great new options that lend itself well to this sort of thing, allowing you to even change your subclass. And it has, some rules for that, as well as some, great tips for players and for DMs to how to build that into your story and how to make it make sense, because maybe you're spending some time learning some new things, and, either you're losing some magical abilities as a result because you're taking on new power. There's always a trade for it. Or, you're training so hard on some things you haven't been able to keep up on others. Which makes it make sense for story reasons as well.
So if you allow me a little follow-up, I understood at some point you said that DMs might reduce the requirements to allow a multi-class if the story invites you to. Because as a DM, I feel that this character is inviting to multi-class, but maybe it doesn't meet the requirements. So as a DM, I could reduce or even remove the requirement to allow that multi-class, because the story is
for sure
pushing you.
Yeah. Or you can
absolutely,
with items that boost the stat that's needed, and kind of, bend that rule that, states that you have to have the stat at a certain level, just, sometimes to make it playable, especially if it's a spell casting class and you're going to use a lot of spells that are, based on your stat and the DC for your spell casting. So when you're playing homebrew, anything goes. And if it makes the story more interesting for everyone, it's just going to be that much more fun.
Yeah, exactly. And when you get to, like I said, if you're the DM and it's not like Adventures League, you gotta play by the rules, because you can make that call for your own game at your table, but then another DM, because the Adventures League's plug and play, right? So you're gonna play with lots of different DMs. They can go to some other DM, and the DM's gonna be like, "No, that's not a thing. I'm sorry, you can't play that character."
Yeah, no, very true. We got a question here from Dan about what is the biggest
very good one.
mistake in terms of juice, not story, that you can see when people first start multiclassing. In my experience, I've seen people that, they come up with a great build that's very powerful, when it comes to combat. And then, the character is just very one-dimensional, and they sometimes get bored with it as a result.
I have a character like that.
Yeah.
I made that mistake.
Yeah, and one thing, too, that I've noticed is, when people jump into games at higher levels, and they haven't had a chance to really play through, their character that they've built as a multi-classed character. Sometimes, an idea that sounds good on paper doesn't execute very well. And I've seen that happen too.
Mm-hmm. you're just too stat dependent, or you don't have just quite enough. You're good for like a narrow level range, and then you just get outpaced by something else.
Or you're only good in certain situations, and then you get into an encounter of some sort that you're just useless in.
Now, the thing that I always notice is that when I say people, the biggest mistake they make in terms of juice is they multi-class either too late. So they've missed their window for that extra bit of of juice when it would be its most effective, or they multi-class too early and they have really, really painful levels. Like, for example, if you multi-class at level 3 as a fighter into something like, let's use my battle mage. You multi-class at 3rd level from fighter into wizard. Now you don't get that second attack if you're going to plan to be more fighter until much later, when everybody else is already making 2 attacks or having their 3rd level spells. You have neither, and it feels horrible.
For sure. Yeah. Yeah, I multi-classed a lot with the first set of my characters, and then after seeing that happen quite a bit, we're in games that were using XP for leveling instead of milestones, or even milestones that were taking forever. Yeah, I just felt so left behind. Any other questions?
Go ahead. One more thing about the multi-classing juice. You look at for example, so you already touched on the very painful levels. We already touched on the lack of interestingness in the character. Another one that a lot of people miss when multi-classing, problems that you can have is that when your character is the nuts and you are having and you do have a really, really strong, powerful character that's also good at social, that's also good at exploration, it feels great, but you got to tone it down a little bit and let your allies and teammates play too. Because it's not so much a mistake in terms of mechanics, but you're gonna rub people the wrong way if you're the star of the show all the time and nobody else gets to do anything.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I mean, there's no such thing as a balanced party in 5th edition, right? You could have a party full of the same class and get by no problem, but you do want a balanced party in terms of the teamwork and such.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Yeah. Is multiclassing a must? No. Is multiclassing fun? Sure. Who doesn't like building characters for fun? I can't say that I've played all the characters that I've built, but it's certainly fun, putting together combinations to see what works. I know recently I was trying to put together a combination for this really cool Magic the Gathering card that I saw. It was the Disciple of Bolas. And I'm like, ooh, this is a cool looking card. What would I have to do to, look like someone who's, casting this, energy spell in between their hands and is wearing armor and has a long sword and all that. And I'm just like, how would I build that? Is that a fighter and a wizard, or is it a hexblade? And so there's a lot of inspiration out there to build cool characters that doesn't have to be about the mechanics of putting together cool builds, but maybe you're just trying to build a certain image or follow a certain archetype.
Yes. There's I remember that discussion. It was open in our UTF Discord.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Okay, well, thanks everybody for joining us. This was a quick one, but we did get through all the content we wanted to. If you did have any more questions, feel free to hit us up on Fan Meetups, or you can join our Discord server for Unite the Factions. Just go to unitethefactions.com. I can put the link here in the chat. And we're actually going to be hosting, as I mentioned at the start of this, our next big event on December 13th. We're running an epic from Season 6, which is a multi-table interactive adventure. We have over 20 tables playing, all the same adventure. It is called Return to White Plume Mountain. White Plume Mountain on its own is one of the most famous adventures in all the history of Dungeons & Dragons. And you're going back. And I can tell you, I've played this epic. I've been a DM for this epic before, and it is a lot of fun. If you're new to Adventurers League, don't worry. Join our server early, chat with a lot of people. Feel free to jump into any of our ad hoc games. And we also will have pre-generated characters available should anybody need them. But hopefully, the talks that we've had here on multiclassing will, inspire, some of your future adventures in D&D. All right. Any closing words, Angelo?
No, other than the fact that I'd just like to point out, there's not a lot of people here, but it's still a perfect time to mention that we are incredibly close to our extra life goal this year. And that's just something that I wanted to say out loud.
Oh, no, that's a really good point. Yeah, if you go to our website, you can check that out as well. We've had some great prizes from Fan Expo that we've been able to give away through our raffles and such. We've raised almost $10,000 for Sick Kids Hospital Toronto. Yeah, so we are I think we're about almost $700 away from our $10,000 goal. So we're pretty close. And hopefully, with a bit of generosity and maybe some cool prizes from Stormcrow Manor, which we also love plugging, as well as...
we love Stormcrow Manor. I miss Stormcrow Manor so much.
Yeah, as well as D&D Beyond. Then, yeah, maybe we can... get some people to be donating some more because we do sell reroll tickets because this is a retired epic. And they're also usable as these raffle tickets. So, again, we invite you to join us. You can find the link on Fan Meetups, which will take you through to our Discord page and our Warhorn page where you can grab a table. All right, so go ahead.
Again, I hope you enjoyed our little talk on multiclassing in the 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons.
Yeah, and have a good night, everybody.
Take care, everyone.
Yep, bye for now.